Hello and welcome to this episode of For Your Journey. On this month's episode, we're going to be talking about the topic of suffering, not a usually happy topic. Suffering by definition usually indicates something that's negative or bad or perhaps painful, and there's been perhaps even within religious communities and churches an assumption that suffering is a result of something someone had done. You must have done this in your life, or there's this sin or whatever it is, and because of that, that's why you're experiencing the suffering in your life. And we wanted to just talk about that and figure out, is that a correct assumption, and then why or why not?
It's interesting because sometimes people attribute it to God, that he had something to do with it, and other ones say, no, God has absolutely nothing to do with it. As you said, it's a result or a consequence of bad behavior, and so you behaved wrong and now you suffer, or even the fact that you made a bad decision. And now because of the bad decision, because God respects your personal freedom, he allows you to go through the bad decision and something bad happens. But we have to look at that a little bit more closely, because that really is not, we really can't see it quite like that. For instance, if one does something wrong, makes a bad behavior, and then they suffer the consequence, there's other people that had the same kind of suffering, but they didn't do that wrong. So what do we say about that? Or they maybe did something also wrong, but they never suffered. They never had the reward for doing something wrong, or a bad decision. And when we look at natural disasters, well, who made the bad decision there? We can't say anybody had anything to do with that. So really, we can't look at it that way, that God has nothing to do with it, and it's all a result of something we did.
So that's where God may not be involved in the situation.
Well, that's one assumption, that man makes his own suffering, basically, and God just allows it to happen because he respects free will. Then there's the other side, where God has something to do with it, and for instance, that he allows it because he's trying to get people to get closer to him. Or, okay, but that doesn't make sense either, because a little child suffers or dies. And how does that work? That they never even knew God. How does that work? Or that he allows it because he saved them from worse harm in their future of their life. So he took them out. Or he needed them for some reason in eternity. But the Chief Apostle nicely asked the question, the Almighty God has to resort to that? He has no better way to solve his issues than to do things like that? That doesn't make sense to us.
Yeah. So those aren't explanations for suffering. Those are things we might have said.
We might have said or heard in the past.
Explain or rationalize. So what should we say? Is there anything to say if someone says, why is this happening? Or more specifically within that situation, not only why is this happening, but where's God in this situation?
God is always here, and he's always with us. But we don't understand him. We can never know his actions. He's beyond us in his omnipotence. And so we can't say that we know why he does it or why he doesn't do it. What we can say, though, is that we must humble ourselves and realize that he doesn't give an answer to everything that he does. And realize that something beautiful we just recently heard in the service, when Jesus said to the disciples when he washed the feet, what I do now you don't know, but later you will know it. And so we must humble ourselves and realize when things happen, we don't have an explanation. And so there is no explanation why God did it or did not do it or allowed it. But one thing we do know, God is perfect and God is love. And that is what our trust is in. And that's what we rely on, and that's what we receive a comfort from, to realize he's never makes a mistake, but he's love, and he always wants to give us strength and comfort, and he's always with us.
Yeah, there's a Bible verse that actually kind of underlines that he's always with us. It comes out of Psalm, the 145th chapter, in verses 18 and 19. It says that the Lord is near to all who call upon him, to all who call upon him in truth. He will fulfill the desire of those who fear him. He also will hear their cry and save them. So I think that's underlining out of the psalmist saying like the Lord is near, that God is near us, and that for those that call upon him, he will save them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that actually sets up nicely our next series of episodes where we're going to be talking about salvation and what are we being saved from and what does that mean. So
Exactly.
no, thank you for bringing some clarity to the suffering and what we can do to try to help process our own suffering, or when we're trying to offer some soul care to those that are suffering around us.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
And thank you for joining us on this episode of For Your Journey. If you have any suggested questions or topics for future discussion, you can find us on Facebook or Twitter. And this has been For Your Journey.